I like a story that's got some concrete structure, but also holds abstractions.
There's something I find magnetic about David Lynch, both his films and his public persona. Even before I got into his unique blend of Americana meets dark surrealism, Lynch was the kind of director I'd refer to as not for me, but I'm glad he's making films. Over the years, my opinion on that has changed. I've gone from a casual, distant admirer to a fan. I need those weather reports from Mr. Lynch.
Not really, but I do think it's cool that he does that.
So, as with all of my media interests, I wanted to make a video about him. The question I started to ask myself is, what do I make this video about? And this has been a real issue. Honestly, I have restarted the script for this multiple times, because I am having trouble answering my own question. How do you talk about David Lynch? The first, if anything obvious answer for me is to deep dive into his entire filmography and look for the recurring elements. I'm a big fan of doing this in general. That's the kind of nerd I am. But that feels wrong here. Something about David Lynch's filmography lends itself to singular viewing experiences to me. Yes, there are many themes and stylistic flourishes that recur over multiple projects, but more than with other filmmakers, I feel as if David Lynch wants us to leave our preconceptions of him at the door. Combine that with the fact that I have not seen all of his films yet, and it feels like a reason enough to avoid going down that route. I don't want to watch Wild at Heart while trying to link it to Lost Highway. That feels reductionist. So, if I'm not going to look at his work as a whole, what should I look at? How do I talk about David Lynch?
Life is filled with abstractions, and the way we make heads or tails of it is through intuition.
I could try to discuss two of his more similar films, taking a look at Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet, two films that dig into the dark side of American ideals. We could focus on the different ways he approached the similar themes in two different ways 15 years apart. But that also doesn't feel quite right. While both are excellent films, they lack a certain aspect of David Lynch that I love, and that's his quirky sense of humor. And that would lead me to Twin Peaks. And as much as I enjoy the series, I feel like talking about it on the internet is the most well-worn path. There have been great analysis videos on the show, and not so great ones. The problem with the videos I've seen, and what I would end up having to do if I talked about Twin Peaks, is trying to solve what it's about. And I think that a definitive answer to the show is defeating what I think the series is really about: mystery. And maybe that's what the video would be, but I'm not sure how I would articulate that beyond that single statement.
It's up to the people then, to, find their own, interpretation.
Would it be worth talking about him as a man? Or more how he interacts with the world around him? His fans seem to be quite enamored with his cryptic yet silly vibes. There's a video on here called David Lynch Being a Madman for a Relentless 8 minutes and 30 seconds that has almost 2 million views at the time of writing this, and it's fantastic. On top of that, you have his YouTube channel where he had dedicated himself to daily uploads on both giving local weather reports and picking a random number for the day, amongst other things. And these videos have a devoted fan base, more views than anything I make. But that doesn't feel right either. To spend the entire time poring over interviews, articles, and compilations, trying to find the meaning behind the man. That's not the kind of content creator I want to be. It's one thing to dig too deep looking for meaning in a filmmaker's work, but another to do so about their personal lives. Not only does that reduce a person to a certain element of themselves, but something about trying to dig into a person's life just feels ick to me. I need to stick to media analysis.
It doesn't really matter what I think. Every screening, no matter what, even all the frames of the film are exactly the same, but there's no two screenings that are exactly the same. It's the viewer and the picture and sound, and it makes a circle, and it just goes like that.
I've spent a lot of time lately thinking about media analysis. In part, my own approach to the films and television I consume for this channel, and I have been questioning if the way I've been looking at art through the lens of content creation, and if it's correct. I like looking at large swaths of work, either many episodes of a show or a director's filmography, and picking apart the patterns and similarities between them. And while I do find that fun, I'm wondering if that is the right path, partially because it perpetuates auteur theory, a way to hold directors with a certain style and way of work to a higher level than others. That's allowing film buffs to look at things like Kubrick's treatment of Shelley Duvall as an artist, doing whatever it takes for their art. I also think that the rise of auteur theory in its current state sidelines great directors like Sidney Lumet, who has had a very varied film career. You don't really see much in terms of video essays on his work, for example. Auteur theory aside, another reason I question looking at a body of work as a whole is because it discounts the individual works. Tying this back to Lynch, and my example from earlier, a video looking into the similarities of Mulholland Drive and Blue Velvet could be interesting. Looking for similarities between all of his films could be, but it does take away from each individual work. David Lynch is a filmmaker who wants his films to be thought about. The way he adds abstractions, or how he includes guiding questions in the home releases for stuff like Mulholland Drive to help guide the viewers as they go. These are tools to help engage with the film's themes. My last video, or the subject of my last video, was decoding metaphor. That is one of the key tenets to consuming Lynch's work, and part of that is the emotional reactions to it. What Bob is and where he comes from isn't what matters when you watch Fire Walk with Me, it's what he represents. He is a metaphor for parental abuse, and it is used to make us feel disgusted about Leland's actions. And you lose something of that when you're looking at the vast whole of a creator's work. All this to say, do I plan on stopping the retrospective look at things I do on this channel? No. More, I am just using my thoughts on David Lynch to discuss the different films. More, I am just using my thoughts on David Lynch to discuss that different films require different tools to dissect. Groundbreaking, I know. But this is the internet, and I do feel like we have reached a reductionist point in talking about things with the nuance that they deserve. You wouldn't analyze a Marvel film the same way you do Lost Highway. And that matters. Media literacy matters, and it's something I want to learn more about. It's also something I want to talk about more, and I plan on it. And as I do, obviously I'm going to keep making videos on it because it's something that I'm passionate about, even without the views. And I'm hoping that some people get to see the stuff I'm making, the stuff I'm talking about, and engage with it. And helps them think about the way they think about media.
People get used to a film that pretty much explains itself 100%. And they kind of turn off that, beautiful thing of intuition when they're looking at a film that has some abstractions. And some people, on the other hand, love these abstractions, and it gives them room to dream. An abstraction, to me, is a thing that cinema can say. And it's so beautiful, for me anyway, to think about these pictures and sounds flowing along together in time in a sequence, making a thing that can only really be said in cinema. It's not words, it's not just music, it's a whole bunch of things coming together and making a thing that didn't exist before.
Let's do this.